Okay, now we're back and we're going to do a diagram in 1-point perspective. Very simple. We're not going to worry about the cone of vision or anything like that. We're simply going to imagine that there is a series of pipes that are the same length that are coming towards us and going back in space in 1 point. So in flat space, all the pipes are laying parallel to each other, going straight back from us like this. But because we're in perspective, they'd all be emanating from that 1-point vanishing point. And so they'll come toward us and diminish as they go backwards. So I'm going to draw an initial line first. Of my initial pipe. And I'm going to call that pipe A. I'm going to put it in blue. And I want to make it clear that it goes back to the vanishing point, so I guess I'll put a trailer line on it. And the length of pipe A is going to be the length of all of our pipes. Now, since I'm going to do various other pipes here, I'm going to also say I can take a picture plane, straight across the picture plane, I can make a reference plane of the length of pipe A all across the picture plane, straight back and forth like this. Could be helpful later. So I'm going to do that right now by simply taking horizontal lines. And I'll call that line 1A to represent A, the pipe, and 2A. Those are just for reference. So now if I had pipes going next to this here, they'd all change going to the vanishing point like this, all across, because even though they're laid straight across from each other in a row in flat space like that, because again we're in perspective on this ground plane going to the 1-point vanishing point, the pipes would behave like this going to the vanishing point. So that is a reference plane for any pipe of this length laying right there lined up with that pipe going across our picture only, would all line up to these front and back ends going to that vanishing point. Okay, so now I want to do a pipe in a different position. We'll call that pipe B. So what I'll do, as I'll say pipe B is here, and I'm going to start the head of pipe B here, and I'm going to cast it back there, and I'm going to clearly call this pipe B. And I'll make the start of it in red, but I don't know how long it is because we haven't referenced it yet, so let me get out of the way here. Okay. Now, let's say I wanted to reference the head of A going to the head of B, kind of like we did the figures in diagram 2. I'd go way out here, so that's going too far out of my picture, because to get a reference point to reference what the true length and depth B should be, since we've already established A, I could go from the head of A to the similar head I've just created for the head of B. But that would take me in a straight line way out here, and I don't want to go out that far. So what I could do is pretend I've shuttled with a reference representation, shuttled pipe A over just to be convenient, because I already did that reference plane. So I could basically do this and say, I'll call that RA, meaning reference A. So that is our reference version of A, which is a ghost of it, but works too. Now, what I can do is create a reference plane. I'm going to go for the head of referenced A, scuttled over. In fact, let me make a couple arrows, be easier. Let me get my head out of the way again. Okay, so I've taken kind of the referenced A, and now I can do the same thing. I can say, all right, let's make a reference plane. We're going to go from the head of A, referenced A, through the head of B to make a reference point on the ground all the way to the horizon. Let me make that darker all the way. And I'll say that's reference point number 1. That's the first one we needed to make. And if I come back from that reference point, no surprise, because I'm referencing the back of reference A as it slid over from A, I can get the back of where B belongs by coming from the reference point now, reversing it, going through to the back of reference A. I now get where that crosses, I get the correct length for pipe or rod B. There it is. That's the correct length because I made a little reference plane from the reference A. So I'll go ahead and do a little shading. That's all flat on the ground. So that reference plane is not standing up, it's flat to the ground. It's just a plane between reference A that has been brought over and B we just started but didn't know how deep in space it was. So we just got that. Now we could do another pipe that is coming out, let's say, right here. And we could say, how far forward would we want that one? So I'll say, we'll start here, something like that. And now I'll do the back of this pipe and say, I want the back of a pipe here. And I don't know how far forward I want to come with it, but that's the back of the pipe coming forward. Okay, the idea is, where can I, how can I reference that? So I could easily take the back of our new pipe, we'll call it C, I forgot to label it, sorry, that's pipe C. And I could say, well, I could easily reference B, it's close enough, I don't have to go way out into space to do that. So I will do that. I will do it in blue, and I will say C has a certain length. I'll go through the back of B. The back of B from the back of C, I should be able to come forward and reference. Go through, continue on to make a reference point right there. I'll call that reference point number 2. And now I can come back from reference point 2, and I'll use my blue again, through the front head of already established bar B to get the new head position of C. From here, back through the head, and this then becomes the correct length of rod C. So C was referenced from B, and B was referenced from A being shifted over as reference A. So reference A we actually referenced B from, but it was originally A shifted over straight on the picture plane to represent kind of a ghost or a phantom of itself. But we can do that because we can imagine all these pipes laid out like this on that reference plane. So 2A and 1A represent a reference plane we originally put in. So now we've had C, and let's do another one. Let's do another red one again and call it D. Where do we want that? Maybe I want it way back here. So why don't I go, let's say I want the back of it, there, and we'll say, we'll do that. Okay. Actually, I'll just do the back of it here. There we go. I'll do the front of it. We'll call that D. Why not make it smaller? So in red again, I'm saying now I'm just starting with the head of D, and it has to go toward the 1-point vanishing point, because remember, as weird as it looks, even if we're a little out of the cone, the idea is what we're saying is that all these pipes are actually lying parallel to each other because they're behaving to vanishing point 1. So that's the kind of diminishment you can get if you're fairly low to the ground in 1 point. Okay, so how do I reference D using C, which would be pretty convenient? Again, we'll use our blue lines again. And I can go from the head of C now to the head of D. Make another reference point. That will be called reference point 3. RP number 3. And then, no surprise, we can come back from the reference point, going through the new pipe D on our way to get to the back end of C. And we strike what the proper length would be for D. So let me make the pipes really clear now. That's pipe D. This is pipe C. This is pipe B. This is reference pipe A. And this is original pipe A, which we made a reference plane from. And this is a reference plane, ground. Okay? I'll go ahead and shade those in as well. Those help us cast back, make reference points, and get the size of all the pipes. So again, we have, at the same length as each other in this simple one-point setup, we have pipe or rod A, then reference from rod A's reference rod. Here we have rod B, and then we get C, and then D. So all we really have is objects with all this very light line work you'd put in your work. You know, again, cobweb thin would be rod A with a reference, rod B, rod C, and rod D. But we know they're all the same size, actually, and they're all parallel to each other because they're all really on flat space lined up like this in a parking lot or in a big flat ground surface going to vanishing point 1, okay? So again, this is just, you know, we could call it referencing 4 rods of the same size from the original rod A. And you could keep going back and forth and doing this all day. And then if you reference one that takes you too far out with your reference point out of your picture, you can always drag straight across the picture plane a reference version of any one of the pipes or objects. You could be doing boxes when we get more complicated, things like that. But the whole point is you can always scuttle across, straight across the picture plane without gaining any size. You can scuttle across a reference representation of an object. In this case, rod A was reference to reference A, okay? And that's pretty much it. And that's referencing some rods there. Okay.